is October 27th, part 1 of the 3-part expert online version. You should have received a copy of the PowerPoint presentation so that you can follow along and take notes. I'm Steve Schillig, the moderator, director of the Small Business Development Center, headquartered at Kent State University, Tuscarawas. If you know anybody on desktop version now and is interested in converting to online, or if you know a new online user, I would tell you that Intuit is offering 1 month free and 50% off for 12 months to SBDC clients, new users of the online version. I don't think it will work for current online users, unfortunately. So we have muted everybody for the speaker's benefit. If you have questions, please use the chat room. I'll monitor the chat room to the best of my ability, and we'll get your questions answered as quickly as possible. This workshop is being offered to provide some hands-on QuickBooks training, but as always, Ann is available for direct assistance during or after these sessions. I'm very pleased to have Ann on the call. She's the founder of Excellent Admin. She finished both her bachelor's and master's degree from Walsh University, worked in the accounting field for over 10 years. I've been teaching QuickBooks for 4 years, and her specialty is small business. And as an SBDC director, is available to our SBDC clients for direct assistance. So this session is being recorded and will eventually be on our website. So watch for that in the next week or two. If you have suggestions or recommendations on other topics, we're always willing to listen and hear and see if there's something relevant that we can offer small business owners. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ann.
Hi guys, good morning. I do want to apologize for last week's technical difficulties. We obviously worked some of those out before Thursday's session for desktop and then obviously for today. But because we had some technical difficulties, I do want to review briefly some of the stuff we talked about last week, just obviously as it's going to move a lot smoother. And then we're going to go over the last item we talked about before we kind of dive into some of the stuff we're going to cover today. So the couple things we're going to go over, we're going to redo a reconciliation. I'm just going to show you the screen and show you the boxes. I'm not actually going to do one. And then we're going to go over entering bills, paying bills. We're going to talk about the invoices again, matching transactions, and then how to edit and create items, which was the last thing we tried to talk about. That was probably the choppiest through the process. So we're going to kind of go over those in like one fell swoop, entering a bill, paying a bill, creating an invoice, and that type of thing. And then today we're going to talk about creating a rule, which is one of QuickBooks Online's really awesome features. Adding attachments. This goes into if you have employees that have company credit cards and you're trying to do tracking for reimbursements and expenses. Adding receipts, again, goes in with if somebody has a credit card for the company. We're going to review the audits, who you can see who's done what, when, and how. And then obviously how we change a transaction, journal entries, memorize transactions, or they're called reoccurring in QuickBooks Online, but it's the same thing. And then we're going to touch on sales tax. I just want to emphasize on the sales tax portion, this is just how to market paid in QuickBooks. This has nothing to do with it on the gateway side. So keep that in mind when we're going through this. And then obviously you have the PowerPoint to write notes down on if you've got it printed out for some of the things that might be missing as we go. So, all right, so we're going to go ahead and minimize this, and then let me get okay. So QuickBooks Online. Okay, so we're signed in and at our normal dashboard here, and we're going to work on this client today because I was doing some data dumping for him before we started today. So if we go to banking, You can see that he's got some stuff in here that's not categorized, some things that maybe aren't in the right spot. We've got some rules here that we're going to talk about today on how we create those. So let's go ahead and see if we can't find a transaction that matches in here. It doesn't look like we have one. So what it means when we talk about matching transactions is that in here, when something comes in from the bank account, so these are synced transactions from the bank account, and then say you actually invoice somebody through QuickBooks Online, when you mark that invoice paid, if the deposit that you made into the bank account is the exact same as the deposit amount of that invoice being marked paid, it will give you a match option here under action, and you will be able to match that transaction. Therefore, you don't have duplicate income because it's marking and receiving that payment and taking it out of what's considered undeposited funds. If you do more than one check in a deposit and you've marked all the invoices paid, if you click on the transaction here, you can hit find match, and it would pull up the list of the ones that are marked as paid, and you would be able to select the ones that would match that reconciliation of that deposit. So you want to make sure that you're matching it back and forth so that we don't have any duplicate transactions there. So that's the first thing, is making sure that you're matching the transactions before you do that. From here, you would go into the bank register and see how it has this big green reconcile button at the top. You would click this to get into a reconciliation. And the cool thing about the reconciliation screen here is you can see the history of when it was last reconciled. You can undo it, you can print it. If you're the super admin, you can do that. If it's just a user, they cannot undo reconciliation. So I just want to specify that for you guys, okay? And then if you needed to go back into the bank register, you can navigate up here. And then what you need to pay attention to is that the date of the last reconciliation is here, and it's the correct date. The beginning balance here is correct. In the ending balance, I'm just going to put $1 so it lets us go to the next screen. And then you would put the ending date. And so their ending date based on this would be June. So if I hit start reconciling, now QuickBooks tries to match all of these for me based on what it thinks would have cleared in that calendar month, right? And then you would go ahead and if this was 0 here, it would be right. Since this is not 0 and it won't be 0 because I didn't put the actual ending balance in here, you could uncheck this box here and be able to click individually along your statement, and it changes this number. Because this, again, if there are things left in this screen after you've done a reconciliation and they're dated in the current month that you were doing the reconciliation, odds are it was a duplicate transaction or something didn't clear. So like, for example, if you paid sales tax and your sales tax never clears your bank account here, then we have a problem that we now need to call the state of Ohio for and figure out why that never came out of the bank account. I let stuff sit in here probably a month or two before I get concerned, because not everybody cashes checks right away. Not everybody does some of that stuff right away. But after that, I start to either call vendors and make sure they got their payments, or I look back and go, oh, there were 2 transactions for the same amount. This usually, again, only happens if you've got a credit card that has 2 users on it and you're trying to make sure that you have all the data in there, or if somebody puts an expense in with a receipt or an attachment, which we'll talk about, and then syncs it to the bank account, but you don't go back in and match the transactions, then you'll have duplicate transactions that way. But it's really transparent to see when you come in through the reconciliation and you've got extra things floating in here. And you'll also see on your bank balance on this screen that it'll be quite a discrepancy. Now, these are discrepancies right now because I just dumped a bunch of data in here for him. And once I actually categorize these, this number should adjust. But if you notice that your numbers are gapped like this and there's not a reason like that, then you have something in here that shouldn't be in here. Okay. So go back over here to the reconciliation. So I would select all. Once this is 0, you would hit finish now. And then you can get your screen. It'll take you back to the original screen. So I'm going to close without saving so that I could take it back. It would take you back to this screen where you could do another month then if you needed to, but you also would be able to see the history. Now I do look at the histories because I go to view report and I actually print this report and attach it to my bank statement that I have printed in front of me. And I do that because then I know if something happens inside of QuickBooks or we have a data glitch or they get a new employee that doesn't quite know everything that they're doing and so some stuff gets wonky. I know that it was reconciled and I can see if there were any adjustments I had to make, what was uncleared. You know, you see all the detail here on what it was. So I always print these. Now, if you're doing a data dump, so like I just did a data dump today from June to October, the printing this report will be multiple pages instead of being like just a summary report. You can choose to pick what you want to see. That's up to you, but you know, this is here. It doesn't go away. So it's always in your history. So like if you don't want to print them, you don't have to. They're always here. I just, again, I like to match it. Makes it clean cut. If I have any questions with clients, I can pull the report by paper. So that's our recap for reconciliations. So now if we want to enter bills, if we go up here to expenses, so you can see here, new transactions. I'm going to say a bill. And then from here, you can choose a vendor. So we're in here. So we'll do that again. The category is, I think we're just under professionals for these guys. Accounting and payroll. So there you go. And then say I charged him $250. Okay. So I've now created this bill. I can make it reoccurring if I want to. It does reoccur on a monthly basis, but I'm not going to do that right now. So don't worry about that. Then you can save the template here. And if you go up here to the reoccurring transactions, you'll see it's the only one listed here and I can hit edit. And you can adjust this if you want to. And we'll dive into that a little bit more as we cover reoccurring transactions. But back to the bill, if you go to bill, we'll enter another one just to do it. And we're going to call this professional accounting and payroll, put 250 in here. Okay. So you can save and schedule. You can save and new.
I just got an error message to the attendees. Hold on, looks like something went wrong. So again, I apologize, but be patient.
Can you see the screen, Steve?
I can, Ann.
Okay. So you have the save and schedule, you have the save and new, or the save and close, or you can just hit save. I'm going to hit save and close because then it puts it down here where you can see the bill and the excellent admin, who it is, the category. So if something changed, you could change the category. Okay. And then you have it here. Now you could do a couple things from here. You can mark this as paid. You can edit it from here. And then you can schedule a payment from here. So you can schedule a single payment for one single vendor here, or up here where it says print checks, you can type in pay bills. Now this is the only bill we have in here because we just entered it, but I can click this. I can say that I only want to pay 100 of it instead of 250 of it. So it's going to keep this open with whatever the difference is, the 150. You could tell it what account you're paying it from, so you can pay from credit cards if we need to, but you could tell it which account you're paying from. So make sure that your checks match the account that you're printing it out of here in QuickBooks. And then you can do online payments, but I just usually save and print. And then, like I told you guys before, you have 2 check types they let you use, the voucher type or the standard. And these are able to be printed. You can handwrite checks too, and you don't have to go through printing them. You could just hit save and close and it will still show in the bank rec. And then you can preview a sample if you needed to check it. And then you can say you're finished with the setup. That's a one-time warning. It will always ask you to pick the type of checks, but you won't always have to set it up. And then you can hit preview and print. But it warned me that I didn't put a check number in, so let's put a check number in. So check this when you're doing it. And then again, here's your preview. You can download them, you can print them. I'm going to close it because I don't need to print them. And then it will always give you this box.
And
yes,
we're losing you. You're fading in and out, and I missed that last point. I don't know if anybody else is hearing.
Okay, hold on 1 second then. Let me. Okay, so we're back here where we would pay a bill. So it says pay bill here. We would check this. You can change this dollar amount. You can hit save and print. And then where I think Steve got caught off is you would make sure you pick a check number here. Make sure your checking account is correct here. And then you can hit preview and print. It's going to tell me that the check number's already used. That's okay, but change it if you're actually printing a check. And then from here, you can hit, you can download it, you can print it. I'm going to hit close because I don't need to print it. And then it's always going to give you this prompt here, which is, did your checks print okay? Yes, no, and if we need to make some changes. I'm going to say yes, so it doesn't stay in my print queue, and I'm going to hit done. Okay, so that's entering a bill, marking a bill paid. Now what happens when you mark a bill paid is if you go into banking, see if I can't find. So here's $150, but it's not the right thing, so it didn't match because it's not the right vendor. But you would look and see if something matched because you would pay a bill that would be the same dollar amount of something that would come through the bank account, or would be like a check right here. And then obviously your check numbers would match and it would start to match transactions here for you. So gives you an idea of how that plays in, just to refresh with less issues as before. So now let's talk about creating an invoice. So that is done if you go through sales here, and then you have invoices here. And then if you've never created one, you're going to have a little startup wizard. These guys they use a POS system, so they don't invoice inside of here. But for training purposes, we are going to go through and create one. So My customer that they're going to do is going to be me. And then we can create the invoice as of today. And then let's see what our income accounts are. Just service. These guys spray for mosquitoes to give you an idea of what they do. So they would do a backyard spray. And then say that that's 150. Okay. Now they are a taxed industry, so I will check the tax box. And then they don't have a tax rate created. So I'm going to skip that for the moment because we'll go over that later in the session today. But you will want to make sure if they're a taxed industry that this box is taxed in order for it to calculate tax. Okay. And then you can hit save and send, save and new, save and close. So I'm going to hit save and send, which then it tells me it has to have an email address to send it, obviously. And then you get a beautiful email that says from Intuit that they can pay the bill if you have payments set up already for them to do credit cards or bank transfers, or that you are at least giving them a paper invoice, and you can tell them down here, make payments to okay. And you could say, thank you for your business, and this is going to print. And then you obviously can do one for statements as well. And then you can make reoccurring if they're a monthly person. I don't know how often they reservice people to do mosquitoes each year. I'm sure it's 2 or 3 times a year. But the amounts might differ, or they have deals during the winter to sell stuff. It all varies based on their industry, but you can do that. And then you can print or preview. And this is what their invoice would look like. All of this, a lot of the invoicing is customizable. We'll talk about that, I think, in the last course as last expert class. So if you don't like the way this looks, which it's kind of boxy and not the prettiest, you can change the template, you can adjust it and everything like that as well. You can download, you can print, that's up to you. I'm going to hit close, and then I'm going to hit save and close. And now you can see it. And then if you were to receive a payment, you can click receive payment, and you can put in whatever payment amount they sent, whether it was $50, $20, the full amount. You could do partial payments, everything like that. And then once it's marked as paid, I can hit save and close. And then you'll see that it's under deposited status. So now from this screen, it's going to try to go into banking. And if you're lucky enough to have a deposit that matches that of 150, which I don't know if they do or not, to be honest. They don't. So I could still click here and find a match and change the time frame, because I'm trying to match something from current. And this payment pops up because I changed the dates to accept it, and I can do this, and then you can resolve the difference. Okay. This is the part of matching transactions. They really should match dollar for dollar, so I'm not going to actually do this. I just wanted you to be able to see a transaction that you could match and how you would manually do it. Okay. So I'm going to leave without saving, yes. And that is how you create an invoice and mark it paid. And then as far as items go for the invoices, is up here in this sales, you could just do, we're in the overview page. You have overview, all sales, invoices, customers, and products and services. If you click products and services, these are your items. They have one service they offer. It's mosquito spray. but somebody like me will offer taxes and payroll and bookkeeping. And then I have packages and training. So I may have 5 of them. And then obviously if I want to create one for them, because of their industry, they're going to be service. So what if I called it training? I don't have to have a category. And then I want to create a training income account. So it realizes it's income. So now it's going to have that. And then if I need a taxable rate, it's here. You can also make items non-taxable. So if you're in an industry where only some of it is taxable and some of it's not taxable, you can change that however we need to. And we can hit save and close. And now you have 2 items here. You can also edit it from here. And then change it if you wanted to put in a price. Training is X amount of dollars per hour. If you wanted to put categories, if you wanted to put in images, if you wanted to change the type, you can do all of that however you want to do it. And then you can also make inactive if you don't actually offer a service like that anymore, and you can get it out of your list and keep everything clean. So that is the high level, quick 20-minute refresher from last week's course. Do we have any questions about anything we covered today? You guys obviously have the PowerPoints. The PowerPoints do have images for this reason, if case
Not
something
seeing it.
happens. Okay.
I'm not
So
seeing
let's
any
dive in.
questions.
Perfect. So let's dive into today's material then, so that we can move right along in our task list here. So let's do, give me 2 seconds here, guys. Okay. So let's talk about creating a rule and why are rules good and or they have their bad moments as well. So this client is a great reasoning for rules. So they only do credit card processing. Being part of a franchise, they have to do it that way. And their credit card processing is this bank card SYS comb. Okay. They sell one product, which is barrier spray revenues. And so this is a prime example into when I would create a rule to make sure that everything goes into the right account. So this one is like, oh, great, these are all rules. So I could go through very quickly and add them all. Enter, 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 and they'll all go in and it's no big deal. Okay. So that's a great example to use a rule. Bad time to use a rule. Circle K. Okay. We go to Circle K gas station, you go to Marathon gas station, you go to BP, the list goes on, right? Sometimes you're getting fuel for your vehicle, but sometimes maybe you needed a little caffeine. So you bought a coffee or an energy drink or a pop or a water, right? Because you were traveling. So if you created a rule and every time you went to that location, then it's going to put it into fuel. Well, then your fuel number is not realistic because when you spend under $7, odds are you're probably not buying gas for your car. Okay. And that's more of a threshold that you would know. We do it generically, but gas is obviously substantially cheaper than it used to be. So those ratios had to change. But that would be one that you probably wouldn't want to create a rule for. Rules work if it's the same processor at the same location. So like you can create a rule for Wendy's. Wendy's is always going to be meals and entertainment. But if you go to the Wendy's in Dover and then go to the Wendy's in New Philly, the rule is probably only created for the one in Dover, not for the one in New Philly. So you'd have to create another rule for the New Philly Wendy's because they have different credit card processors because they're owned by different people. And so it won't recognize that rule right away. Rules help QuickBooks Online learn your spending habits and your routines in a good way. Okay. So we'll go through some of this. So to categorize and match, I want to click it and I'm going to try to get it to bring me all the rules that it has up front. Okay. So here's one where he created a rule for Circle K. This $21 one is probably fuel. This $3 one is not. So I would click on this and instead of having it as fuel, I would put it as meals. Okay. and then you can click add. And it changed it on the screen, and it's going to enter the transaction. Okay. So for these ones, this is correct. So we'll click add here. This one's correct as well. And you do, when you create rules, and we'll get into creating a new one here in a minute, you can set it up to where you never actually have to view the ones that have rules. I want to view them because, like you saw, that one for Circle K is created, and that could have been totally wrong, and I would have had to fix it later. And so I obviously didn't want to do that. But if they're listed here and I have to go through and glance at them as I'm looking at them to make sure they're in the right spot, then we're golden to make sure that everything gets categorized properly. So you can obviously add individually here, but you can do a bulk add. So I'm going to jump down to fuel because that one's right. Home Depot is right. These guys are right. This definitely would be fuel again. That would be repair and maintenance, repair and maintenance, repair and maintenance. So you see I've selected 7 of them because they're correct, and I can hit accept. And it's going to go ahead and enter them in, which is what this little thinker guy is doing. And then it says they've been categorized. Okay. Now, if I decide to click this the other way, so I can see things that aren't categorized, and say I want to flip this to show me in alphabetical order. Here we have some sales tax ones. I'm going to skip those for the moment because we're going to go over those when we get in to QuickBooks. So here's one. So Ally payment. We bought a car. So this is an automobile expense, but technically it should be an auto loan because he has a new loan. And we're going to put this as a liability here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit add, and then see how now I categorize that. So this one realized that it should be an auto loan, and I'm going to hit add. And now it wants to tell me that it wants to create a rule. So when you're going through transactions and you click the same transaction twice by the same vendor, in any session that you're doing, you get this ability to create a rule. So this is what I was talking about, where it would automatically add it for you. I don't mind if you want to automatically add meals and entertainment, but most of the time I still want to look at it because then I know what is on the bank statement as well. So I always click this off. It's going to say that Ally payment is always a loan, and you can hit create rule. Okay. And then here it adjusted this one to be the rule, and I can click add. Okay. So anytime you do something that has 2 transactions of the same person, you'll be able to create it. So here's a good one, bank fees. So I'm going to click add because that's right. And I'm going to click it again. And now it recognized that I didn't want it to auto add, which is great. Though when you log out and log back in, it will automatically check this again. So you'd have to uncheck it again. And then you have the fees to be bank fees, and I would create that rule. Okay. So that does that. The rules are designed to make it easier for you when you are going through your transactions, because we're creatures of habit and we spend money at the same places over and over and over again. Okay. So it's really important that you remember that. Now, what happens if a rule's wrong? So if you click on here and you go to, I think it's going to be under here. Where did it go? My button's gone. Well, let's do it this other way first. Okay, so if you go in here to a rule that's wrong. So for example, I saw one on page 2 here. Here, for this one, for Ask My Accountant. See the rules applied. If you click on this, it brings up this rule and you can change it. So like if it's an expense, great, but it doesn't need to go to ask my accountant. Everything that they buy on here is usually a cost of goods sold. So I can change that and hit save. And now all of the Amazons here are costs of goods sold. And again, you can see that the rules applied and you can do that and you can hit it, exclude if you want it to come off, anything like that. Okay. So you have the ability to edit the rules from this screen, which is probably where you'll edit them the most because it's just going to be easier to click on it. You also can change an account. So like I'll log into Amazon and say this $55 ended up actually being office supplies, right? I can change this here without undoing the rule because odds are more of it is cost of goods sold than it is office supplies. Okay. And then if, for example, this $153 one, if this one is more than just cost of goods sold, you have a split button here where you can say that some of it is office supplies and you can be accurate with your transactions as well. So you have the ability to edit the rules inside of here. You also can edit the rules from expenses. You can go in through there. We'll talk about that in another course next week because there's another piece that plays into that, which we don't want to cover today. Okay. So that is creating and editing a rule from the main page, which is what we're trying to do. So then the next step we're going to talk about is attaching attachments and or attaching receipts. So if I click in here, you have an attachment button here. And this attachment button allows you to search through wherever you've downloaded or wherever you're at, or if you've scanned something in, you can attach it here. I encourage people that don't like a lot of paper to use this feature because then if somebody comes in and has a question about an expense, you've got it right here attached to the expense they're questioning. You can click on it, you can reprint it out if you need to, and you can shred it when you're done because it's still in here. People's fear is that it bogs QuickBooks down. It doesn't bog QuickBooks Online down. They're a web platform. They've got the space. That's what they're designed to do. But it gives you another spot to store something safely that's infinite, as you know that the carbon copy receipts fade in the course of a year or yellow or get harder to read because they've been through so many people's hands trying to do all of that stuff. And especially with more people working virtual and remote, this is a way to make sure that you're trusting that their receipts are accurate. So usually when people go on business trips and you're like, you have, $300 to eat for the time frame, you want proof that they're eating and that they're not, buying expensive bottles of wine or whatever it might be, right? So you want them to put in their receipts that show the detail in order to get reimbursed and or to make sure that your credit card statement reconciles. This is also a good way to monitor tipping to make sure that the tips, the server didn't change the tip amount on your credit card. I don't know if anybody's ever had that happen to them, but it does happen. Sometimes it's totally on accident. Sometimes it could be, something they're trying to do. But if you have your copy of your receipt saved somewhere, you have it. I think it's really important to save questionable receipts. Questionable receipts would be, for example, for me, I'm an office admin person. I do bookkeeping. I went to Aldi's, and Aldi's has that great aisle, guys, that has the miscellaneous stuff in it. They had a laminator, and it was like $12. And I was like, this is the best $12 I'm going to spend right now because I need a laminator at work. But an Aldi's receipt, to anybody that knows Aldi's, is like, oh, that's a grocery store. Well, put an expense in office expense. Well, because I bought a laminator, right? So I would keep that receipt. I would attach that receipt because it would tell them that I bought a laminator and the laminator paper at a grocery store, which is an office expense. So those would be things that you kind of want to attach. It's just another check system. If you choose to use it, you don't have to, that's really up to you guys. Okay. So you can do that. The other way to do it is, I'm going to switch customers here just because I know these guys use it. So if we go up into expenses here, see if I can find one that he's put in a receipt for. Okay, so they should be right here. See if I can find any in here. So here are some receipts. So under banking, you have this. Now I'm going to click on one of these so you can see what it looks like. This is them. They went to lunch and he used his cell phone, another perk of QuickBooks Online, to take a picture of the receipt. And then QuickBooks goes, okay, this goes to this credit card and this is the vendor, Taco Bell, and then gets the dollar amount off of it. Okay. So then when you have your list of receipts here, it gives you an option to match all these. Well, yeah, we want to match these. These are, absolutely the right way. And so you just want to check them all, make sure that the vendors are right and everything is right, and then you're matching them. Okay. So this comes from, these guys are 2 partners. So each partner makes sure when they spend whatever it is that they scan it in. Some of the images aren't the prettiest, but I'd rather have a not pretty image that has an image than nothing at all. And so you have this here, and this is how we verify what they're doing on the credit card that they're using. Okay. So again, you can use the mobile app. You have your own username. You can snap a picture of your receipt. It's going to ask you to fill in a few things on it, but you'll be able to see it here where then we can review it. And now you've got the attachment / receipt attached to the statement as, inside of a virtual system, and you don't have to worry about scanning stuff in.
Ann, can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm having internet problems, but do you need to keep the hard copy of these receipts if you're doing photos of the receipts?
No. You wouldn't have to keep the hard copy, because if you ever needed it for something, you would be able just to print it back out. Okay, so then our next thing that we're going to talk about is, let's kind of dive into journal entries. And the journal entries, we're going to talk about kind of when they're used and why we use them. So people misuse journal entries a lot, I think, personally, because they think it's easier. It really takes just as much effort to create a journal entry as it does to create a normal entry inside of it. Journal entries, they even add an extra complex to it, which people don't realize because it's just a comfort thing. Like, oh, I'll just do a journal entry for it. What people don't realize is when you do a journal entry is like bulk entry. So like you take a bank statement or a credit card statement, and say you want to debit the account for what you paid, right? So the payment was $500, and then you need to credit the expenses which were spent on the credit card. So when you do that, you're going to have bulk entries. So say I went and had 3 trips to the gas station. So I'm going to put fuel, and I'm going to put $50 plus $50 plus $50, right? So now my fuel is 150 of my $300. Then I'm going to say I had food and I went to 4 places for food, $5 here, $7 here, whatever, right? All you're going to see in the journal entry is a lump sum total. So when you deal with somebody auditing your books, they want the receipts. Okay, they're going to want physical proof of where you came up with this total dollar amount. And so you could create more work for yourself by doing a journal entry instead of just entering each individual transaction. Now, QuickBooks Online is integrated, so to enter individual transactions is not hard, okay? Because it's downloading and syncing 90% of your data already. So the few things you might be missing, we just enter manually. Or you figure out where they went. It might be that they got mapped wrong when they got categorized. It could be something silly, right? It could be the dates off a day because the date that the statement got it versus the date that QuickBooks got it might be off a day. That happens. It's not an instantaneous, you swipe the card, it's here. It is a little bit of a day lag, but it's still the most consistent and efficient way to do it. So when you do a journal entry, you guys would go up here to journal entry. And it's going to give you this lovely screen here, okay? You can date journal entries for whatever you want. You can journal entry numbers. I use my initials and then the date. And the reason I do that is that then I know I made this journal entry, other than the fact that it's going to be thumbprinted later, and I did it on this date. If it's a payroll entry, you can name it payroll. Whatever the journal entry might be for, you can name it, name it accordingly, but I always initial my journal entries so that I know what they are, okay? Then you see up here that it changed it here, and then we would do, let's do, so we're going to do an auto loan, and then we're going to say that it goes to automobile expenses. So anything that you do on one side, you have to do on the other. They have to balance, okay? You can write descriptions, quarterly adjustment, interest expense, whatever it might be, okay? You can have one thing here, and then you can change this one to 100, and then you can make this interest expense, and it'll fill in the 50, okay? Down here, you're going to see where it's this. You can delete things if it's not the right, you end up changing your mind on what you want it to be categorized, okay? You can memo it. Again, you can still add attachments here if you needed to prove why you did the entry you did. You could attach in a bank or a credit card statement if you really wanted to use journal entries for credit card statements. Obviously, you just have to scan it in or download it. And then you can hit save and new. And now it saved my journal entry and it created another one. Now up here, you can click on this and you can see and bring the journal entry back up. Okay. Now, a lot of times journal entries can be challenging because if you don't know your debits from credits, I didn't pay attention to which way it's running. We can check it and see if it's right or wrong. But if you don't know your debits from credits based on what you're trying to do, and it is different whether it's on the balance sheet or the profit and loss, you could do these backwards and create negative numbers, and then you've got to go back in and change it and do that types of things. So, journal entry is not always keen for day-to-day entry. Journal entries are great for depreciation entries. If you want to do a monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually, go ahead. Your accountants at the end of the year will do tons of journal entries. That's what they're going to do. They do them to make sure your books match your tax return. It's really important that we do that. Obviously, because if you pull financials for the bank, you don't want to look like that you don't know what you're doing, and you want to make sure that you know that it's done right and that everything matches. Journal entries can be done for a lot of that stuff. So if you were to do journal entries for depreciation, you might want to make it a reoccurring journal entry so that it shows up month after month or, every 4 months, however you want to see it. And you can set that up when you go through it. We'll go through reoccurring transactions here in a little bit. If you did the journal entry wrong, you need to just come in and adjust it the right way. Okay. If you click this reverse button, all the reverse button does is take your original entry, reverse it in another entry, which zeroes that entry. So it doesn't actually fix the fact that you did it backwards the first time. It just erases the entry you did so that you can enter it again the right way. So reverse is probably not going to be something you guys use very often. And then you obviously have the ability to copy one. You know, if you do monthly sales reports and you use like a square and you need to put in your monthly totals so that your sales number is accurate, you might make a copy each month and just adjust the numbers because the accounts are going to stay the same here. So you can absolutely do that. You could delete it if you wanted to. You could see the transactions, and then this is where you see the audit history. And anytime anybody touches this, it's going to be done by whoever it was done by. So everything has this audit history. Who's doing it, when they're doing it, the dates are here, and everything like that. And as you get more people using QuickBooks with you, whether it's your sales team, your marketers, your employees, your admins, whatever it is, right? Or just another business partner, you would be able to see who's doing it. Most of the time, it's me and a client that are in here. Most of the auditing history is mine because they are just looking at reports there, or, you know, cleaning up some categorization things that I had questioned, but they're not doing a lot of the bookkeeping because that's why they pay us, is to do the bookkeeping. Okay. So the audit history may be good or bad pending where you're at business wise, but it is here and you can see it. Okay. So then if I go back up to journal entries here, I'm going to click on my little guy here and go back to the same journal entry. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit delete because we don't need this here. Now you can see that it still will show someday I had a journal entry and that I deleted it. So if somebody deletes something by accident, you have the ability to see who deleted it so that you can figure out why that happened. And why is it, you know, what can we do to fix it? QuickBooks Online has a void feature, which we'll talk about and get to the next week. But I do encourage void more than delete. We're going to kind of leave it at that for today. But when you're in, like, that journal entry didn't give me an option to void. So my option was to delete. But because QuickBooks Online keeps the audit history, I could still look at it if I wanted to. Where most of the time when you delete, it's gone for good. Okay. So that's how you do a journal entry. You also can do it from your gear icon here. Mine looks a little bit different than yours, but down in this tools here, you'd be able to make a journal entry. So most of your tools are going to be here, where mine as accountant is up here. Okay. But you do have two places to do it. And then you can go into it at any point. Now, if you go into reports and you click on something that's a journal entry, you can click on it, pull it up, you can adjust it from there as well. So you have a couple avenues to get in and find your journal entries and adjust them if needed, and then obviously to use them if you need to. Do we have any questions about journal entries?
Not seeing any.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about memorized transactions. So if we go over to our dashboard here, which we haven't seen in a couple weeks, other than when we log in, you can see your dashboard here. If you go up here to Reoccurring Transactions, which is under your list item here, this is going to be where you can create a new one, and you can select what type you're trying to do. So here's where you could do a journal entry like we talked about. You could do an invoice. If people are getting paying the same amount each month, you can do that way. If you have transfers that you do, I doubt we'll have reoccurring much of that. Expenses would be a big one. You know, you're going to have a car loan every month. That would be the same. You're going to pay rent every month. You could do that in reoccurring. You know, those types of things. And then obviously bill, you could put them in as bills. So however you want to do it. So we're going to do an expense. So I'm going to click OK. And it's going to bring up this lovely template name. So I can say that this is rent. And then it's going to be scheduled. We'll do it 5 days in advance. And then SDL Management is our rent company. And then it would be on monthly on the 1st of every month. And we're going to start this on November 1st. And there's no end date to this. And then this category would be rent expense. You can put in that this would be November's rent, and then when you populate this, you can change the description. You can edit it to say, you know, December, January, February, March, whatever it is. And then our dollar amount is 300. And I can hit save template. Okay. So this is going to tell you that it's an expense, that it's scheduled every month, going to start on the 1st, and this amount. Okay. So you can click edit and you would edit the template, which brings up this screen here. Okay. Or if you want to use this or delete this or skip it, you would use the little down arrow. So if you create a depreciation journal entry, and you save it as a reoccurring thing, but you don't schedule it because you don't know how often you're going to do it right away, right? But you learned how to do it and you want to do it, you know, quarterly, then you would want to click on it and click use, because it's going to bring this up, but you won't adjust the template that you created, but you could change this. So say your accountant told you to pay rent through January, pay it early. So you want to change it to, and we're going to do, right? I can hit save and close. It didn't adjust this one here, right? But I did create an expense on the other side that's for $900 for my 3 rents. So reoccurring transactions can make your life easier in areas like that. It's mostly going to be entries that are done few and far between once a year, and you need that reminder. So because it's going to it'll go, hey, on November 1st, which we'll still be working through class. So when we log in after November 1st, it will prompt us to do this. So we'll get to revisit this next week. And we'll be able to see like what it tells us to do when it prompts up to do the reoccurring transactions. Okay. This is what you would call a memorized transaction in desktop language. It's the same thing. So you get to have it here. And then you can do your reminder list and go back over to reoccurring. You know, if you've logged in and clicked away from it, your reminder list gives you the ability to see what that pop-up was. Okay, so you can see when it would be good to use those, how we would use them, you know, what we've got there. Okay, so that's reoccurring transactions. I know we've covered a lot so far, so I'm going to make sure that we slow the pace a little bit for the sales tax side, because the sales tax side may create some questions. I do want to emphasize that when you pay sales tax in QuickBooks Online, you are not actually paying sales tax to the state of Ohio. Okay, they are not connected portals. It does not work. This is just to make sure that the sales tax being factored on your balance sheet is accurate to the sales tax that you're paying into the gateway. So I'm going to switch customers again, just because this customer pays sales tax through the gateway and will be really easy to see, because he set up a tax account. So it's the only account that he pays sales tax out of. So there's very few transactions for it to kind of get buried. So let's look at banking. So he has an account called tax account. Okay. If I go into the register here, you can see on 10/21, he did this. I'm going to delete this and pop it back over to our normal screen where we're usually working. So if I go back to banking, okay, it's right here. So QuickBooks Online realizes that he paid the state of Ohio for sales tax. What QuickBooks Online isn't realizing is that you don't want this just to be sales tax, okay? You want to actually file the sales tax return inside of QuickBooks. So if you go over here to taxes, the only tax he has is sales tax, right? So you would click in here and it says that this was due on the 20th, which he did pay it. So I would view return. And then it's going to say that you did this to the gateway. These were your gross sales. These are your taxes owed. And you can hit record payment. And then we need to change what this dollar amount is, because the dollar amount that it's asking for isn't the dollar amount he paid. So I'm going to click out of this, go back into banking here, and write down this dollar amount so that I have it on the next screen, which is 1248.43. Okay. Let's go back over to taxes, back into this return. Now we're going to enter an adjustment to get it to match. Okay. So you can enter an adjustment this way, or you can just record the payment and change this dollar amount here. Now for him, I'm going to need to review why we paid, $100 less, basically. He paid this on the 20th, and then the bank account, which it came out of, is the tax account. Okay. So if I click record payments, it still says he owes $92. So I would need to do the math to see if this $92 was a discount, which seems kind of high, or why do we have a $92 difference? Now, I'm not saying that the numbers in books pending the way you invoice are your absolute numbers, but you need to know when you're doing it how to factor your absolute numbers. So he does this by hand because the portal changed and it threw our sales tax off. So we'll probably have an adjustment at the end of the year to do. But that's something that we know, but it's still $92 is quite a discrepancy that I would need to communicate with the client and figure out why it's done this way. Okay. You could do another payment. You can view the full report. So this report would show you which counties. So don't worry, like it's going to match the stuff for you. Okay. And then you also can pull it as detailed as each customer. So again, if you see these numbers become blue, you can click on them and they're going to show you what invoices you were working with. Okay.
And is it a good idea to have a separate account for taxes, paying taxes?
It doesn't really matter for sales tax. He does it more for payroll tax, and he just happens to run his sales tax through that same account, and he just ended up calling it a tax account. I would say for sales tax, you don't necessarily need a separate account because the money that you're collecting in sales tax is going into your operating account. So I personally would pay it out of that same account. So now if you go into their financials, and I'm just going to scroll, not a whole lot of this means anything to you guys, except for where you get down here where it starts to say Lucas County, Mahoning County, Medina, the revenue. So this is funky. This is billing improperly. It should be in one of these counties. But if you notice that all his counties are 0 for the most part, except Summit, which this is probably Summit County. So there's something that isn't coded right that I'm going to fix, which would adjust this number for them. But these are the things that you would see because these are the counties he pays sales tax in. So you would know that. But if you never mark it paid in QuickBooks the right way, all these will have like massive numbers at the end of the year pending your sales size, and you would be like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. How do we have all of this? So you definitely want to pay attention to make sure that it's being paid properly. Now, if we go back to our banking tab, now it matched it. So now it goes, okay, well, this was sales tax and we recorded a payment for this dollar amount and you could match it. His bank account is now back to normal. And because we kicked that transaction out to correct it, you now have done it the right way. Okay. Now you'll see that instead of just saying sales tax, it says it's split, where if I edited this transaction, you can see that it goes back to a sales tax payment. So everything with QuickBooks Online is integrated together. So you have to do it. You have to follow all the steps, although it seems like additional work, because you're like, well, I marked it paid in their sales tax portal. Now I got to go mark it paid in the other portal. But that's the only way the accounting works, is if it's all integrated together and you're following all the steps to do it, even if you think it's too much work. That's why, another one would be when we paid bills. We talked about paying bills and how it was like kind of monotonous. A bill is not necessarily something that is a GoDaddy that's reoccurring billing on your credit card. It's not every time you swipe your debit card. It's physical bills that you get, utilities, your accountants, those types of things that you would cut real checks for would be what you would put in bill pay. So that when those checks clear the bank account, you've already got them entered in because you marked the bill paid. So I just wanted to emphasize that how important that is, because at the end of the year, if you want to sell your business and your payroll taxes weren't marked in here properly, or your sales taxes weren't marked in here properly, you're going to look like you have a bunch of liabilities and that you're delinquent in those two departments, when in reality, you know that you've been paying it on the gateway and you're not. So that's why I kind of wanted to talk about that. And again, I emphasize that this is not attached to the gateway in any way, shape, or form. You still have to take the full report from QuickBooks, log into the gateway, and pay each individual county based on your list when you do your vendor's tax, okay? Do we have any questions about sales tax?
Only that we have one attendee that doesn't pay sales tax, but they do pay CAT and use tax. Can they set up an account through QuickBooks, or is this only for sales tax?
That is only for sales tax. When you just pay CAT and use tax, you just enter it like a normal transaction. Well, actually, I lied. The CAT tax you enter like a normal transaction. The use tax is another portal part of the sales tax. So you would need to set that up inside of here properly. And that would be something if we want to connect individually to go over, because there's not a lot of people that use tax. I could show you how to do that, no problem. But the CAT tax is just another transaction that you enter, and you just name it under the account. Instead of saying like it's investment account, you would just say it's CAT tax, so that you know you paid it.
And Ann will share her contact information at the end, so that if you have specific questions like use tax, you can reach out to her.
Yep, exactly. So then for next week, guys, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about how to edit certain accounts and some of the other transactions. We've talked at this at a high level. We're going to dive into it. I'm going to show you how, when you make an edit, how it changes all the way through. So QuickBooks Online is really nice with that. We're going to talk about sub accounts. We're going to talk about voiding versus deleting transactions. Like I told you about, we would talk about that. And then we're also going to dive into some of the other nitty-gritty extra features that QuickBooks Online has that make the integration feature work a lot better for you guys. But we're getting down to where you're going to notice the PowerPoints are less images and more text, as we should be comfortable with the platform. And then obviously leaving more line to review some of the stuff higher level. So the next 2 weeks, as we're finishing the course, you'll see that we will go back to the beginning, and you'll see me go through a full swoop of transactions, enter a transaction, how it plays into the bank account, going into the reconciliation. You're going to start to see it kind of tie together like we did today when we reviewed last week because of the IT issues, because it's really important that we pay attention to that and that you guys understand the full vision. It's been in snippets, so it's time to start to put it back together. Well, I would say that we are ready for any questions you guys would have, or if you think there's anything else we need to review between last week and this week, because I know I went fast for last week, but I did cover everything we wanted to cover today so far.
Okay, well, we'll stay on for a few minutes to see if there are any specific questions. And you'll type your information in now, Ann, for those that don't have it. Great, thank you. And I didn't hear anything from the attendees about the static or non-static or whatever. I was having internet problems on my issues, but apparently I'm told that it wasn't on your end. So good job, whatever you changed, Dan.
That's awesome. Glad to hear it.
The phone app for QuickBooks Online, which app do I need to use the receipts?
So let me, I don't think there's more than one, but let me just double check really quick. Let's see here. What type of device do you have, Angela? Is it an Apple or an Android? Okay. Yeah, it's just the normal QB logo here. And then when you sign in with your same username and password as you would if you were on a desktop logging into the internet, it will prompt you to be more mobile. And then you'll see how it has a different sidebar that makes it user mobile friendly. And it'll have like a quick take a picture thing at the top, and you would click it and it'll snap the picture that you have of everything you want. Chris, the logo, it is the same. QuickBooks made it an Android logo. It looks almost exactly the same for Android. I'll check it right now because I'm an Apple user, but I do want to make sure that it is almost the same. Yeah, so for the mobile app, you can actually go to the Intuit page here and you can click get a link and type in your phone number, and based on your device, it will send you the proper one to download. So I would say take advantage of that. Absolutely. And then Jennifer, when recording mileage, do I use the QB app or do I need a separate one? The QuickBooks app will not track mileage. You can do it as an entry, but you still need to have a book when you go to your accountant at the end of the year, Jennifer. So you definitely want to use either a book itself, like they sell mileage log books. They're like the size of a calendar that would go in your purse, or use a different app. I always suggest Miles IQ. It prints a really nice, easy report at the end of the year. You can have more than one vehicle on it, and every time you move your car, you have the ability to say it was a work trip or a personal trip and which vehicle you used. So it's really easy, quick of a button, and not super expensive. I think it's like $99 for the year for Miles IQ, but it's going to save you from having to bring a book when you could just print a report for your accountant.
What if you're not in the same vehicle?
Yep, you just record the start and end miles, and then you would do the math to total it. And just keep a sheet of it.
And maybe you can address this because it comes up pretty often. When you're reporting mileage as an expense, the company should reimburse that person throughout the year, correct? Or at least once a year for that to be treated as an expense?
If you're reimbursing an employee, you can reimburse up to so much. So a lot of places will do, like I do 25 cents per mile because I have somebody that drives 45 minutes to come to work. So I reimburse them. Basically, it breaks down to be about an hour of their pay. And then they can still deduct on their personal end the difference between 25 to 58 cents, which is what the mileage reimbursement is right now. And so you could take the difference personally. If you're taking a mileage deduction as a business owner, you don't reimburse yourself for it. It's just a credit on the account. And then I would just recommend that you pay for the gas out of the company, even if the company can't take that actual deduction because you're going the mileage route. But there are some kind of curves in that based on what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. I think we're good for a week then, and we'll just see you next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, as we keep diving into some of the higher level and using everything we're learning so far.
Yeah.